My name is Florence, and I'm 58 years old. Just last year, I sold my small food company for $10 million, but kept it secret from everyone, including my only daughter, Amanda. When I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, I still didn't tell her about the money. The way her husband Jeff treated me when they thought I was just a struggling business owner told me everything I needed to know. Let me tell you why staying quiet saved me. If you're watching this, please subscribe, hit that like button, and let me know where you're tuning in from. I think you'll want to hear what happened next. I raised Amanda alone since she was 3 years old, after her father decided family life wasn't for him. Back then, we barely had enough money for our small apartment, but I was determined to give her everything she needed. I started my food business right in our tiny kitchen, using my grandmother's recipes for homemade jams and pastries. I would stay up late after putting Amanda to bed, mixing and cooking, then wake up early to package everything before taking her to daycare. Our first farmer's market stand was just a folding table with a handwritten sign. I still remember how proud Amanda was standing beside me and telling everyone her mommy made the best strawberry jam in the whole wide world. Those early days were exhausting, but wonderful. I sold every jar that first day, and something told me this could be my path forward. Over the next 30 years, I poured everything into growing that business. From farmers markets, we expanded to local grocery stores, then regional distribution. When Amanda was 12, I finally saved enough to rent a small commercial kitchen space. The day we moved from our home kitchen to that space, Amanda helped me carry in all our supplies, and we had a little ceremony where she cut a ribbon I made from baker's twine. Florence's Kitchen became known for quality ingredients and traditional recipes. We never used preservatives or artificial flavors, which meant our profit margins were thinner, but our customers were loyal. By the time Amanda was heading to college, we had 10 employees and distribution across 3 states. Those college years were tough. Amanda got accepted to Northwestern University, and while I was bursting with pride, the tuition bills nearly broke me. I took out a second mortgage on our house, worked 7 days a week, and somehow managed to pay those bills without ever letting Amanda know how much I struggled. She was the first in our family to go to college, and nothing was going to stop that. Amanda and I were close during those years. She'd call me every Sunday night, and we'd talk for hours about her classes, her friends, and her dreams. During breaks, she'd come home and help in the business, offering ideas for new products or packaging. I thought we'd always have that bond. Everything changed after Amanda met Jeff during her senior year. Jeff came from money and had aspirations to climb the corporate ladder. From the beginning, he seemed to look down on my business. The first time Amanda brought him home, he walked around my production facility asking questions about revenue and scalability, rather than the passion behind what we created. "It's cute," he said, in that tone that meant it was anything but. "But have you ever thought about selling to a larger company? These small operations are really just hobbies, unless you can scale." I tried to like him for Amanda's sake, but after their wedding, our relationship became increasingly strained. Amanda called less frequently, and when I visited them in their new home, I felt like an outsider. Jeff would talk about his corporate job and their friends in finance, making it clear that my world didn't fit with theirs. By my 57th birthday, I was feeling tired. 3 decades of early mornings, late nights, and constant worry about the business had taken their toll. My hands were starting to show signs of arthritis from years of repetitive work, and the joy I once felt when developing new recipes had diminished. That's when Heartland Foods, a larger regional company, approached me about an acquisition. Initially, I dismissed the idea. This business was my life's work, but after some reflection, I realized I was ready for a change. I wanted time to travel, to read books that had been piling up for years, and maybe even date again after being alone for so long. The negotiations were intensive and completely confidential. When Heartland offered $10 million, I nearly fell off my chair. My financial advisor confirmed it was a fair valuation based on our growth and market position, but it still seemed surreal. The deal included keeping my staff employed with good benefits, which was non-negotiable for me. I decided not to tell Amanda about the sale. Our relationship had become so distant that it didn't seem relevant anymore. Plus, something in me felt that Jeff might suddenly show renewed interest in my life if he knew about this windfall, and I wasn't ready for that kind of insincerity. So I signed the papers, received the wire transfer, and quietly stepped away from daily operations, staying on as a consultant while I figured out my next chapter. What I didn't expect was how quickly that next chapter would take a terrifying turn. The morning I found the lump was ordinary in every way. I was in the shower running through my mental list for the day when my fingers brushed across something that shouldn't be there. My body went cold despite the hot water streaming down. I finished my shower in a daze, dressed, and called my doctor immediately. The next few days passed in a blur of appointments, mammograms, and finally, a biopsy. I sat alone in the sterile examination room when Dr. Patterson came in with the results. She had a kind face, but it couldn't soften the blow of her words. "Florence, I'm sorry to tell you that the biopsy shows malignant cells. You have stage 2 breast cancer." The room seemed to tilt slightly. I heard her continue talking about treatment options, survival rates, and next steps, but it was like listening through water. All I could think was that I had no one to drive me home. "Is there someone we can call for you?" Dr. Patterson asked gently. "A family member or friend who can be with you right now?" I thought of Amanda immediately. Despite our strained relationship, surely this would matter. I nodded, took out my phone with shaking hands, and dialed her number. "Mom, I can't talk right now," Amanda answered, sounding annoyed. "We're heading to a dinner with Jeff's boss. Can I call you tomorrow?" "Amanda, My voice cracked. "I just got some news from the doctor." There was a pause. Then, "Is it serious? Because we really can't be late for this dinner. Jeff's up for promotion." I couldn't bring myself to say the word cancer over the phone while sitting in that cold room. "No, it's fine," I lied. "We can talk tomorrow." "Great. Love you, Mom. Bye." She hung up before I could respond. Dr. Patterson was watching me with compassion in her eyes. "No one available?" "No," I said, straightening my shoulders. "But I'll be fine. I've handled difficult things alone before." Over the next few weeks, I attended appointments by myself. I sat in waiting rooms filled with patients accompanied by spouses, children, or friends, while I clutched my purse on my lap and pretended to be fascinated by outdated magazines. I became an expert at taking notes during consultations, since there was no second pair of ears to catch what I might miss. The nurses started to recognize me as the woman who always came alone. One of them, Maria, would go out of her way to sit with me for a few extra minutes, explaining things more thoroughly or just chatting about normal life. "No one knows you're sick," she asked one day as she took my blood pressure. "My daughter's busy with her own life," I explained, "and I don't want to burden her." Maria's eyes were kind but concerned. "Cancer is hard to face alone, Florence." Amanda did call back the next day as promised, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. She spent 20 minutes talking about Jeff's promotion at dinner, how she'd found the perfect dress, and how they were thinking about upgrading to a larger house now. When she finally asked why I'd called the day before, I made up something about a minor medication change. It wasn't just pride that kept me silent. After selling the company, I had been organizing my financial affairs. I had the money from the sale, good health insurance, and a modest house that was paid off. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to worry about money, but I found myself wondering what would happen to all of it if my treatment wasn't successful. I scheduled an appointment with my attorney, Harold Benson, who had handled the company's sale. We discussed creating a trust for my granddaughter, Lily, who at 6 years old was the only person in Amanda's household who seemed genuinely happy to see me when I visited. "Have you discussed your diagnosis with your daughter?" Harold asked as we reviewed the documents. Not yet, I admitted. Our relationship has been complicated lately. Harold removed his glasses and fixed me with a serious look. Florence, I've been doing this job for 40 years. I've seen how serious illnesses can bring out both the best and worst in families. If you're creating a trust that potentially bypasses your daughter, you should be prepared for difficult conversations. I nodded, but internally I'd already made my decision. I would fight this cancer with everything I had, but I would do it on my terms. And that meant keeping both my diagnosis and my newfound wealth to myself until I understood what I was dealing with, both medically and personally. Before, my diagnosis visits to Amanda and Jeff's house had become an exercise in emotional endurance. Their home, in an exclusive suburb, featured all the markers of success-manicured lawn luxury cars in the driveway and interior straight out of a design magazine. Every visit felt like an unspoken comparison between our lives with mine, perpetually falling short. Jeff worked as an investment manager at a prestigious firm and never missed an opportunity to highlight the gap between his world and mine. During one dinner, he discussed a client who had finally sold his small business for a decent exit of $2 million. That's what smart business owners do, Florence, he said, swirling expensive whiskey in a crystal glass. They build to sell, not hang on forever. The implication was clear. My refusal to sell my little jam company showed a lack of business acumen. If only he knew what was sitting in my investment account. Amanda had changed too. She'd adopted Jeff's values so completely that sometimes I hardly recognized the daughter I raised. She'd call to cancel our lunch plans because Jeff surprised her with shopping trips, or she'd check her watch repeatedly during our visits as if counting the minutes until I left. "Mom, you really should update your wardrobe," she said, during one visit eyeing my comfortable clothes with disapproval. "If you dressed more professionally, maybe your business would attract better clients." I had built a company from nothing, as a single mother put her through an expensive university without a penny of debt, and now my clothes weren't good enough for her. Each comment was a small paper cut to my heart. The most painful moments were watching how they treated my granddaughter Lily. She was a bright, creative child who loved art and reading, but Jeff seemed determined to push her toward more practical interests. "Drawing won't pay the bills," he said once, removing her sketchbook at dinner. "We need to focus on math if you want to get into a good college." She was 6 years old. The last time I visited their home before my diagnosis, I brought homemade cookies and a handcrafted storybook for Lily. Jeff intercepted the gifts at the door. "We're trying to cut down on sugar," he said, taking the cookie tin, "and she has plenty of books already." Later, I found Lily hiding in the guest room where I was staying. "Can I see what you brought me, Grandma?" she whispered, looking toward the door to make sure no one saw her. I pulled the storybook from my suitcase and watched her eyes light up. We sat together on the bed, reading in hushed voices. It was the only genuine moment of connection during that entire weekend. What broke my heart was a video call with Lily a few weeks later. Amanda had reluctantly arranged it after I'd called 3 times asking to speak with my granddaughter. "Grandma, when are you coming to visit again?" Lily asked, her small face filling my phone screen. "Soon, sweetheart. I miss you." She looked around to ensure she was alone, then whispered, "Daddy says we don't visit you because you're not rich like his parents. Is that true? Grandma, does being rich matter?" I swallowed hard. "No, Lily. What matters is being kind and loving the people in your life." "That's what I thought." She nodded seriously. "I told Daddy that your cookies are better than the fancy ones from the store, but he said those cost more, so they must be better." The conversation shifted to her school projects, but that moment stayed with me. My own granddaughter was being taught that monetary value determined worth in all things, even relationships. It was everything I had tried not to teach Amanda, yet here it was, the legacy being passed to the next generation. After that call, I made fewer attempts to see them. Each rejection hurt more than the last, and I found myself withdrawing to protect what remained of my self-worth. I focused on adjusting to my post-sale consulting role, and later, when the diagnosis came on my treatment plan. What I didn't realize was that by pulling back, I was inadvertently setting the stage for what would happen when they finally discovered my illness and what it might mean for their financial future. The chemotherapy began in January, and winter seemed like an appropriate season for what my body was experiencing. The oncology center had a wall of windows overlooking a garden, now dormant and covered in frost. I watched it during my first infusion, thinking how similar I felt to those sleeping plants, hoping to survive until spring. The side effects came as predicted: nausea that made even water taste wrong, fatigue that felt like gravity had doubled, and the gradual loss of my hair, which had always been one of my few vanities. I bought a wig, but rarely wore it at home, preferring the honest reflection in my mirror to any pretense. My treatment schedule was every other Tuesday, which gave me time to recover enough to appear normal if Amanda did call or rarely visit. I became skilled at applying makeup to hide my pallor and timing my limited energy to coincide with these brief family interactions. During my third chemotherapy session, I noticed a woman about my age sitting alone, looking as out of place as I felt. She had a colorful scarf wrapped around her head and was knitting something purple. When she caught me watching, she smiled. "First time?" she asked. "Third," I replied. "You?" "Seventh. It gets easier. I'm Janet, by the way." That simple exchange began a friendship that would become my lifeline. Janet had ovarian cancer and had been fighting it for almost a year. She had 2 sons who lived out of state and, like me, was navigating treatment largely alone. We began scheduling our appointments for the same days. We'd sit together during infusions, share tips for managing side effects, and occasionally treat ourselves to lunch afterward on good days. Janet understood what no one else in my life could: the strange, suspended reality of living with cancer. "Have you told your family yet?" she asked one day as we picked at salads neither of us had the appetite to finish. "No," I admitted. "My daughter and her husband. It's complicated." Janet nodded. "My sister-in-law didn't know about my diagnosis for 3 months. When she found out, she suddenly became very interested in how I was updating my will." She gave me a knowing look. Family gets strange when mortality and money enter the conversation simultaneously. It was a prescient observation, though I didn't fully appreciate it at the time. The day everything changed was ordinary until it wasn't. I was at the grocery store trying to find something that might taste good, despite the metallic sensation that coated my tongue from treatment. The fluorescent light seemed particularly harsh that day, and I felt lightheaded as I reached for a can of soup. The next thing I knew, I was looking up at the concerned faces of paramedics. One was taking my pulse, while another asked questions I couldn't quite focus on. There was a crowd of onlookers, and I felt a rush of embarrassment as they loaded me onto a stretcher. At the hospital, a different doctor than my oncologist examined me, frowning at my blood test results. "Your white cell count is dangerously low, Ms. Walker. This is a common complication of chemotherapy, but you should have come in sooner. I understand you're being treated for breast cancer." I nodded weakly. "We need to contact your family," he continued. "Is there someone we should call?" Before I could answer, a nurse was already looking through my wallet for emergency contacts. The only card there listed Amanda. "She's at work," I protested feebly. "Don't bother her." The nurse gave me a sympathetic but firm look. "You need someone here, Ms. Walker. We're admitting you for at least a couple of days." I drifted in and out of sleep after that, the medication making time elastic. When I opened my eyes again, Amanda was standing at the foot of my bed, her face a storm of emotions. "Cancer." Her voice was tight. "You have cancer and didn't tell me." I tried to sit up but didn't have the strength. I didn't want to worry you. You're so busy with your life, and I was handling it." "Handling it?" Her voice rose. "You're in the hospital because you fainted in a grocery store. That's not handling it, Mom." Before I could respond, Jeff appeared in the doorway carrying 2 coffee cups. He handed one to Amanda and surveyed me with new interest. "Florence, this is serious," he said, his tone somewhere between concern and accusation. "Stage 2 breast cancer isn't something to keep secret from family." The doctor had clearly filled them in on my condition. I felt a surge of resentment at this invasion of my privacy, however well-intentioned. "How long have you known?" Amanda demanded. "About 3 months," I admitted. 3 months. Her eyes widened. "You've been going through chemo alone for 3 months while lying to me about your health." I wanted to point out that she hadn't exactly been checking in regularly, but exhaustion kept me from engaging in that argument. As they continued expressing their shock and displeasure, a young doctor entered to check my chart. He glanced at Amanda and Jeff, then turned to me. "Ms. Walker, your oncologist Dr. Patterson called. She wanted me to make sure we're coordinating with your financial counselor about these hospital charges. She mentioned your recent change in circumstances might affect your coverage options." Jeff's head snapped up. "What change in circumstances?" The doctor looked uncomfortable, realizing he might have said too much. "I'm sorry, I thought I'll let Dr. Patterson discuss that with you directly." But the damage was done. I could almost see the wheels turning in Jeff's head as the doctor excused himself. The conversation after that shifted, with Jeff asking detailed questions about my treatment plan, insurance coverage, and whether I needed help managing my affairs during recovery. I was too weak to deflect his questions skillfully, but something in Janet's warning echoed in my mind, making me cautious about how much I revealed. Within days of discovering my illness, Amanda and Jeff transformed from distant relatives to overly attentive caretakers. After being discharged from the hospital, I expected to return to my peaceful home. Instead, Jeff appeared at my door with an overnight bag. "We've decided I'll stay with you for a few days to help out," he announced, walking past me into the house. "Amanda's arranging for a home health aide, but until then, you shouldn't be alone." This was the same man who couldn't spare 20 minutes for coffee with me in the previous 6 months. Now he was inspecting my medicine cabinet and rearranging my furniture for better mobility. Amanda called 3 times that first day, something she hadn't done in years. "Mom, I still can't believe you kept this from us," she said during the first call. "We're family. We should face these things together." By the third call, her focus had shifted. "Jeff thinks we should talk about practical matters. Do you have a living will? And what about your insurance coverage? Is it adequate for cancer treatment? Those bills can be astronomical." I murmured noncommittal answers, claiming fatigue when the questions became too probing. Jeff, meanwhile, was surprisingly thorough in his caretaking duties, but I noticed his attention drifting to my home office whenever he passed it. Once I caught him lingering near my desk, eyeing the locked drawer where I kept financial documents. "Can I help you find something?" I asked from the doorway. He startled slightly. "Just looking for stamps. Thought I'd help with your bills while I'm here." "My bills are set up for automatic payment," I replied. "No stamps needed." That evening I called Janet from the privacy of my bathroom. "They've barely spoken to me in months, and suddenly they're managing my life," I whispered. "And Jeff keeps asking about my finances." Janet's sigh was heavy with recognition. "Classic vulture behavior. My brother-in-law did the same thing, started talking about power of attorney to help me with decisions when I'm not feeling well. Be careful, Florence." "You don't think Amanda would—" I couldn't finish the thought. "Love doesn't always win against greed," Janet said gently, "especially when it's been encouraged by someone like your son-in-law." The next day I claimed improvement and insisted Jeff return home. "I appreciate your help, but I need some normalcy. My friend Janet checks on me daily, and my doctors have my condition stabilized." He protested, but I remained firm. After he left, I called my attorney. "Harold, I need your advice," I began, "and possibly some changes to my estate planning." Harold agreed to visit the following day. Before hanging up, he said something that stuck with me. "Florence, when people show sudden interest in an ill person's finances, it's rarely about ensuring the person's comfort." The next morning, Amanda arrived unannounced with breakfast and a determined expression. "Mom, we need to discuss your living situation. Jeff and I think you should sell this house and move in with us. It's too much for you to maintain while you're sick." I nearly choked on my tea. "Sell my home, Amanda. I've been here for 20 years. All my memories are here." "It's just practical," she insisted. "The money from the sale could help with your medical expenses, and we could convert our guest room for you." I studied my daughter's face, searching for the compassionate child I'd raised. Instead, I saw calculation behind her concern. "My treatment is covered by insurance," I said carefully, "and I'm not ready to give up my independence." Amanda's expression hardened. "This isn't about independence, Mom. It's about survival. You don't have infinite resources. The business barely turned a profit last year." She didn't know I'd sold it. The realization that she and Jeff had been discussing my presumed financial situation was chilling. "I appreciate your concern," I said firmly, "but I'm not selling my home." She left shortly afterward, clearly frustrated. I spent the rest of the morning moving important documents from my desk to a small safe in my closet. That afternoon, when Harold arrived, I told him everything that had transpired. "I'm not surprised," he said grimly. "I've seen this pattern before. Your daughter and son-in-law believe you have limited resources and a potentially terminal illness. In their minds, they're planning for an inevitable outcome. What should I do? First, secure your assets. Second, be very careful what you sign. And third, consider whether you want to tell them about the company's sale or keep that information private until you see their true intentions." After Harold left, I sat in my garden watching birds at the feeder and contemplating how relationships that should be founded on love had become transactional. The birds took what they needed and flew away, but at least they were honest about their intentions. The defining moment came a week later when Jeff drove me to a chemotherapy appointment. While I was receiving treatment, he excused himself to make some work calls. When he returned, his jacket pocket bulged suspiciously. That night, I checked my handbag and found my house key missing from its usual place. The next morning, I had all my locks changed. The day I discovered the extent of Jeff and Amanda's plans was unusually warm for early spring. I was feeling stronger after a good week between treatments and decided to sit on my back patio with a book. My neighbor's yard abutted mine, separated only by a low hedge, which is why I could clearly hear Jeff's voice when he stepped into their yard to take a phone call. "No, Tom, it's more complicated than we thought," he was saying. "She's being stubborn about the house. Says she won't sell." A pause. "Yeah, exactly. If she'd just be reasonable, we could consolidate everything before she gets worse. The treatment isn't working as well as they hoped." I froze, my book forgotten in my lap. How did he know details about my treatment progress? "The money situation is the real issue," Jeff continued. "We thought it was just the house and maybe some modest savings, but Amanda found some papers when we were at her place last week. Looks like there might be insurance policies we didn't know about." My blood ran cold. They had been searching through my personal papers while supposedly helping me. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks we're just being supportive family, but time isn't on our side. The doctor said stage 2 can progress quickly if the treatment isn't effective." Another pause. "Yeah, power of attorney is the goal. Once we have that, we can make sure assets are properly managed while she's still here. Amanda's her only heir anyway, so it's really just accelerating the inevitable." I must have made a sound, because Jeff suddenly stopped talking and peered around the yard. I ducked below the hedgeline, my heart pounding. After a moment, he continued in a lower voice, and I couldn't make out the rest of the conversation. That night, I could barely sleep. The betrayal cut deeper than I had imagined possible. My own daughter was complicit in a plan to take control of my assets while I was vulnerable. The next morning, I called Janet. I need to find out exactly what they're planning, I told her, and I need to protect myself. Janet didn't hesitate. My nephew is a computer specialist. He can help secure your accounts and maybe set up some monitoring to see if anyone tries to access them. With Janet's nephew's help, I installed security cameras in my home and added extra protection to my financial accounts. What I discovered over the next few weeks confirmed my worst fears. Jeff had tried to access my bank account online multiple times. Amanda had contacted my insurance company, claiming to be managing affairs for her ill mother. And most disturbingly, Jeff had met with an attorney who specialized in guardianship proceedings for elderly or incapacitated adults. The final confirmation came unexpectedly from Lily. Amanda reluctantly brought her for a brief visit one Sunday afternoon. While Amanda was on the phone in another room, Lily climbed onto the sofa beside me. "Grandma, are you going to heaven soon?" she asked with childlike directness. Startled, I hugged her close. "I hope not for a very long time, sweetheart. Why do you ask? Daddy told Mommy that you might go to heaven and then we can fix up your house and sell it for lots of money." She looked up at me with innocent eyes. "But I don't want you to go to heaven. Who will read me stories?" I kissed her forehead, fighting back tears. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily, and I'll always read you stories." When Amanda returned, I maintained a pleasant facade, but inside something had hardened. That evening, I made 3 important calls to Harold, to my oncologist, and to a private investigator recommended by Harold. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered evidence of Jeff and Amanda's plans. The private investigator discovered Jeff had consulted with a real estate agent about my home's value. He had also researched how to challenge a will on grounds of mental incapacity. Most damning, he had started a draft lawsuit, claiming I was unfit to manage my financial affairs due to my illness. Armed with this information, I met with Harold and a financial advisor to restructure my assets. We created an ironclad trust for Lily's future education, placed the bulk of my wealth in protected accounts, and drafted a new will with specific provisions to prevent challenges. "They won't stop easily," Harold warned. "People who pursue family money this aggressively rarely back down without a fight." "Then I'll give them a fight they won't forget," I replied, feeling stronger than I had in months. My next oncology appointment brought unexpected good news. The treatment was working better than anticipated. The tumor had shrunk significantly, and Dr. Patterson was cautiously optimistic. "Your numbers are improving, Florence," she said, smiling. "You're responding well to treatment." It was time for a confrontation. I was tired of pretending, tired of being seen as a dying ATM rather than a mother and grandmother, and I was ready to reveal the truth about my financial situation on my own terms. I invited Amanda and Jeff to dinner at my home, telling them I wanted to discuss future arrangements. They arrived precisely on time, Jeff carrying a folder of documents I had no doubt were related to their plans for my assets. The table was set perfectly for our confrontation dinner. I'd ordered catering, something I rarely did, but I wanted to conserve my energy for what was to come. Fine china that had belonged to my mother graced the table along with crystal glasses and silver candlesticks. If this was to be a pivotal moment in our family history, it would have the proper setting. Amanda and Jeff arrived looking like business executives heading into a negotiation. Amanda kissed my cheek perfunctorily, while Jeff surveyed the room as if already measuring for new furniture. "Mom, you shouldn't have gone to all this trouble," Amanda said, her tone suggesting I was being irresponsible with my limited energy. "It's no trouble," I replied calmly. Some occasions merit special attention. We made stilted small talk through the appetizer course. Jeff asked pointed questions about my recent treatments, seeming disappointed when I mentioned the positive progress. But stage 2 can be unpredictable, he noted. It's important to prepare for all scenarios. Yes, I agreed. Preparation is essential. As the main course was served, Amanda pulled a document from her purse. Mom, we've been thinking about what would make your life easier during recovery. We've drawn up some papers that would allow us to help manage things for you. I took the papers without opening them. What kind of things do you imagine managing? Jeff leaned forward. Medical decisions, household matters, financial concerns, simple quality of life improvements. Like selling my house? I asked innocently. They exchanged glances. Eventually that might make sense, Amanda said cautiously, but only if your condition warranted it. I nodded thoughtfully. And my financial accounts, would you manage those too? Only to ensure bills are paid promptly, Jeff assured me. Cancer treatment is expensive, and we wouldn't want you to worry about logistics. I placed the documents on the table and folded my hands. Before we continue, I have something to share with both of you. I reached into a drawer of the sideboard behind me and withdrew a folder of my own. From it, I produced several photographs taken by the private investigator. This is you, Jeff, meeting with a real estate agent outside my home 3 weeks ago. I placed the photo on the table. This is you accessing my computer when you thought I was napping. Another photo. And this is a printout of attempted logins to my bank account from your IP address. Their faces registered shock, then anger, then an attempt at innocence. Mom, you're misunderstanding, Amanda began. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I also have copies of emails between Jeff and an attorney discussing how to petition for guardianship on grounds of my mental incapacity due to cancer treatments. Jeff's face flushed red. You've been spying on us. I've been protecting myself, I corrected. Just as you've been planning to protect my assets from me. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. We were only trying to help. By researching how to challenge my will, by plotting to sell my home, by discussing my death as if it were imminent when my doctors are actually optimistic. My voice remained steady, though my hands trembled slightly. That doesn't sound like help, Amanda. It sounds like theft. You don't understand, Jeff interjected. Your business is barely profitable. Your medical bills will eventually exceed your resources. We're trying to be realistic about your financial future. Here, it was the moment I'd been waiting for. I smiled, feeling a strange calm descend over me. About that, there's something you should know about my financial situation. I withdrew one final document from my folder. This is the sales agreement for Florence's Kitchen. I sold the company 8 months ago to Heartland Foods for $10 million. The silence that followed was absolute. Jeff's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Amanda stared at the document as if it might be a forgery. That's not possible, Jeff finally managed. We would have known. You've shown so little interest in my business over the years, referring to it as my little hobby company. You never asked about our growth or distribution expansion. You were too busy being embarrassed by what you perceived as my small-time success. I turned to Amanda. And you stopped asking about the business years ago once you decided it didn't fit with the image you wanted to project. $10 million, Jeff repeated, his voice hollow. Yes, all legally mine, carefully invested, and now largely inaccessible to both of you. Amanda found her voice. What do you mean inaccessible? I'm your only child, your heir. Yes, you are my daughter, but as of last week my estate is restructured. The bulk of my assets are now in a trust for Lily's benefit when she turns 25, with specific provisions that neither of you can access those funds for any reason. Jeff's face contorted with rage. You can't do that. We have rights as her parents. Actually, I can and did.